one of my favorite 5-minute conversations. I was at a prospect. I'll admit they're not a client of ours, but I don't know, a couple years ago, this new product development guy of a healthcare instrumentation company said, well, we're sort of interested in Agile, tell me about it. And one of the questions he asked me is he said, look, we have the FDA on our backs, and we have to show every requirement and every request and every little piece is done. And I just don't see how, if I've got hundreds of little stories, that I can tell that I've done everything I'm supposed to do. And he did it, how do I do this? And he asked me in a way of like, I know you can't answer this, but you're a smart ass and consultant, and here I'm putting this out. You can just see him sitting back just waiting for me to be stumped by this question. I kind of surprised him by saying, well, I don't see how you can do that either. Seriously, that's what I said. I don't see how you can do that. Because I don't see how you can do that. Because if you've got a whole lots of little pieces, you can't possibly tell if you've got the whole thing. You ever take a puzzle and just have it in all pieces in the box and it's not new? Do you know if you got the whole puzzle? You can't possibly tell. I said what you want to do is always come from the big picture. What's the big thing you want? Like, what's the minimum marketable feature? What's maybe the smallest thing you could release, but what's the whole piece of the smallest thing you could release that has value? And then how do you break it down? That'd be like maybe getting a new puzzle where it's all in one piece, then breaking it up and making sure you don't lose any pieces, and you've got it all, even though there are lots of little stories. Does that make sense? Let me give you an example of this. And it's funny, I could talk about this being a really big transition. I mean, this was a group of, 150, 300 people. It was part of a much larger organization. It was a big success. They really loved what we did. And I could talk about the assessment and all the training and all this huge stuff. But I hate to say this. When I look back on it, it was a 2-day class that I led that resulted in 90% of the value. I mean, I'm serious. I really think it was this 2-day class I did. What happened in this class was I had all the product managers, I had the team leads, I had the managers, about 25 people, and we had on a wall put all, it was what we call, I forget what we call it, like Lean Agile release planning. It was basically you come up with all your stuff and you figure out how you're going to do the whole thing from a big picture down. And we had a wall of stickies, and I don't mean something like this. It actually went from here to about here of 4x6 yellow stickies, and each one of these was a feature, not a story. And there were 4 or 5 rows of these. And this was about 10 months worth of work. And the reason there were 4 or 5 months is we had like lots of different platforms, like HP and Windows and Unix, Linux, things like that. So you had this whole thing on the wall. We've been working for about a day and a half on laying all these out. And then I asked this room, and I said, how many of you, without a doubt, like it was due in 10 months, it was like January, it was due in the end of October, November. I said, how many of you have no doubt that we'll get this done in 10 months? And nobody raised their hand, which I kind of figured. So then I said, what up here do you have to get in 10 months or you do not have a product? See, now these are already minimum marketable features. These were already what they said was the smallest thing, but I knew that wasn't the case. So I'll tell you where I got very impressed. It took 15 minutes. I literally I said, what I want you to do is draw a line, and everything to the right of the line would be great, but isn't absolutely necessary, and everything to the left of the line has to be there or you cannot release it. It took them 15 minutes to get there. I was very impressed. But it wasn't really that hard, because they knew what the product was. They'd already broken down all the different features they could have. So now the question is, what do? Do you say, well, let's not worry about this. Let's build this in 10 months. If I said that, what do you think 10 months later where they would have been? They would have been maybe with this stuff done and not now working on these? Yes, that's not what I told them. I said, what you want to do is, we looked at how long, because we had estimates for all this stuff, how long would it take to do this? And it came out to be 6 months of work. Okay, so 6 months. Our new project, we don't have a 10-month project anymore, we have a 6-month project. We're going to get all this done in 6 months. Now, why did I want that? You ever be on a project that gets de-scoped at the end because you're running out of time? And you say, oh, let's not do this feature, and the development team says, oh, we already did that one. Or, let's do this one. Well, we haven't done it, but we're halfway done. See, I wanted to make sure we didn't start any of this stuff until we got all this stuff. So guess what they did? They focused on this. They got it done in about 6 months, and then they did this. And they actually got pretty much the whole thing done. It wasn't exactly everything. Why do I say this had the biggest impact? Because how do you think focusing on this affected the development teams? Had a positive impact, right? It had them focus on what's important. It had them not worry about stuff that would distract them. Now, there were developers in the room, obviously, because you had technical dependencies, you had some architecture folks and stuff like that. But do you see how we could positively impact the teams without really giving them any training at all? But this is a big picture view, isn't it? I call this, by the way, Pareto versus Parkinsons. Pareto is 80% of our value comes from 20% of our work. That's this stuff. Parkinson's is however much time you have, your work will fill it. So that's why if we said you can do all this in 10 months, they would have just not quite done all that in 10 months. So if you're not setting your teams up for this and they're failing, it may not be their fault. It may be because they haven't been set up for it. Make sense?
Thanks for watching this lightning webinar brought to you by NetObjectives. We're committed to equipping our clients with effective business-driven software development methods so they can be more successful. Please let us know how we could help you. Visit us at www.netobjectives.com.